We got a first timer on this whole podcast, let alone this series, but Tommy Sikes with Travel Tirement, which is a phenomenal thing. We're going to have an episode directly about him, his business, and everything that he does. But be sure to check out his YouTube channel. Today is all about the 12 days of giving. And I'm very excited to have his client story, knowing his background and everything that's a little different than we've had on before. So without further ado, Tommy, why don't you tell us your client story, give us the profile, and let's get into this.
Well, the travel retirement phenomenon, I'll say, is kind of fell in my lap. As you know, you and I follow each other on Twitter, and I'm a huge fan of, affordability. We have a major, housing issue in the United States. Not only just numbers of houses, but obviously the cost. And a while back, I'm a big fan of Italy and France, just for travel and been to both countries, France several times. Anyway, I started posting these just short tweets of pictures of very affordable, super affordable housing in Italy and France. And again, just completely just a personal, like, oh my gosh, this is pretty cool. Like, did you realize you can, buy a house in Italy for, $90,000, completely livable? Anyway, I got a lot of responses from that, and I was like, oh, there's some interest here. And then I started realizing, this is a direct result of the housing issues in the United States. And I grew up, I was very, money secure. My dad was a doctor. We lived, very well. I was honestly clueless to money for a long stretch, until I realized, like, a lot of my high school friends and some of my college friends, really struggled with their families. And a lot of it, again, is related to housing, and that insecurity about, affordability. It's a big issue. So anyway, this travel retirement is basically a platform where I'm showcasing these low cost, affordable properties, which is kind of like the carrot of the whole thing, in Italy and France. Again, super affordable. I mean, it's just honestly, one of the most common questions I get from people is like, well, what's wrong with these places? Like, are the walls filled with mold, or whatever? And it's like, no, there's like demographic things that have gone on. People who don't visit these places and live, like I said, in the United States, don't realize how affordable it can be in certain parts of the world. But showcasing these low cost properties, I realized, well, there's a need here for people to, again, not just, pack up and do it, but to give people options. And that's what, a lot of financial planning to me is about, opening people's eyes to possibilities, think about things that they maybe haven't thought about before. Again, from the affordability standpoint, as you know, and you talk about this a ton, our industry, sadly, is focused mostly on the higher net worth, people out there, the people where the affordability housing, especially, is not necessarily an issue. And so anyway, my idea with this, and it's a work in progress, is, again, to provide a platform where we can build out basically, simple financial plans, incorporating the possibility of, again, an expat retirement, maybe, moving to France or Italy, whether you want to go and maybe just live on your Social Security, which is completely possible. Whether you want to sell your house, which maybe is appreciated some in the United States, buy a lower cost place there, and then have that extra money to live, more sustainably. There's a lot of moving parts, but the big goal is, again, open people's eyes to the possibility that just, I would call middle class Americans who are getting crunched there are some avenues that they can consider that maybe they haven't before. So that's the kind of big picture what I want to help educate people about.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is that client that I don't want to say ideal client because it's not the right word, but like that person that we're speaking to right now that may be in this realm, middle class, what does that look like from I guess monetary standpoint, where they're at mentally, that this, expat idea would really trigger them? Because there's a lot of them out there, right? Even my own
Oh yeah.
clients have thought about not being in the United States. So yes, they think about it, but what does that really makeup look like of that person?
I would say there's a mix. There's a good number of people who, again, get in touch with me. They subscribe to the channel or they join the email list, and um, they'll they'll message me and say, "Oh, we love your videos. My grandmother was Italian, and she grew up in this region, and we've always wanted to go see like where the family came from, and there's a family connection there." There's a lot of those um, where it's, "Hey, we've always talked about this, like ever since we got married, and after the grandmother passed away, and we talked about we really need to do this, and things get put off, or it's unaffordable at the time." Um, so part of it is that like people just have this longing for either a familial reason, or they're, again, just, I mean, France is the most visited country in the world. Italy is the fifth most visited country in the world. So there's no shortage, obviously, of amazing things to see: the food, the culture, the history, the landscape. Um, but again, it typically comes back down to like a personal, either a personal connection or a longing for that. The other kind of common, I don't want to say issue, but the desire that people have is they're, maybe in their 50s or even in their 60s, they're behind on the retirement savings. There's not a number I would put to it, because again, that's individual. Some people feel like if they had $400,000, they'd be richer than they ever thought they would, whereas it's a million for somebody else. But it's that feeling of, I'm running out of time. I have limited resources, and I have the time, but the time is the issue. I don't have the time to save 40% for 10 years. 10 years, I want to, I'm going to be in my 70s maybe, and so I want to make the most of what I have now. I'm like you, completely judgment free. There's no, you are where you are. We can't go back. But like I said, we can look at options. Let's talk about what we can do potentially, and give people that, at least, hope that things can be better, or reach some dream that they had when they were younger. So yeah, I would say, like, if you look at like my videos on YouTube, demographics, and again, I assume they're fairly accurate. I mean, Google, I
Right.
guess they know everything about everybody
Everybody.
nowadays. But they're, typically in the, I would say, like 45 to 65, 70-year-old range is what it shows. So again, it's those people that are um, probably not super like independently wealthy, because they would have already bought a place, in Italy, or it'd be their second or third house. But people who are either, they have a dream, but then they also have like fears, and they're not sure. Number one, they're not sure about the numbers, which is, it's part of it, but that's not the driving force. Usually it's we want to, we have a desire we want to go towards, or we have a fear that we're not going to be able to live like we want to here. Yeah. So that the demographic usually is that kind of scenario.
Okay. And obviously the fears come up, like, so and we touch on them briefly. We don't have to dive into them because you have YouTube videos on those. But like the top three that off the top of my head, obviously the affordability just in general is going to be probably number one. And then it's probably more like the livability, like healthcare, taxes, those types of things. Can you, talk through those of affordability being, obviously you said, property for 90,000 for us in America, that's relatively low. So everyone's
Yep.
like, hey, is it full of mold? No, that's a normal ass house. Can you talk to us about in terms of like, how does one achieve a mortgage? What does it look like over there? Is it different? And then we'll back into, healthcare. Obviously, American healthcare is a lot different than others. And then the third, like taxes. Obviously, taxes are a lot different as well. So can you attest to those three things?
Yeah, and the housing, the affordability thing, it also goes to rents. Rents over there are, again, relative to American standards, super affordable. You live in Iowa, is that right? Yeah. So
Yep.
I'm in like rural North Carolina, middle North Carolina. It's not crazy. It's not like obviously Northeast or California prices, but still, over there you could rent. In Italy in particular, Italy is lower cost generally than France, but parts of France are super affordable too. You can rent, a 2-bedroom, apartment like in a little village, in a town for $600-700. Again, like ready to go, no renovations needed, things like that. So it's the purchase is very affordable, but also you can rent for very, very affordably. You mentioned mortgages. You can get mortgages in both Italy and France. It's hard though, as a non-citizen, as a non-EU citizen. It's not impossible. What's probably the best idea for people who maybe you can't afford to just buy, have cash and buy a place for cash, is to actually rent for like a year and establish a history there. Unlike the United States, I don't think Italy or France use like a credit reporting system like we do. So if you want to get a mortgage, you basically go to your local bank. And so the point being, if you live there for a year, you open up a local bank account, you go in and see your banker on a regular basis, they're going to be much more, reasonable when it comes to, hey, I have all these accounts still in the United States, or I'm getting this, here's my Social Security from the United States. It's more personal, I guess, than just, filling out a rate calculator with information like in the United States you might do, where they're gonna check your credit score. Do you meet this number? Do you have this income? It's much more analog, I guess.
Yeah, more relationship based, a lot like we used to be in the past, right? Like where it's, hey, I have a banker, he takes care of me in that relationship, as opposed to nowadays it seems like if you don't check any of the boxes, it doesn't matter.
Right. Like, yeah, if you don't check a certain box, you're not even going to get a call back. You're not going to get an email. But my point being, mortgage is possible, but initially it's probably, again, we can build this into a plan to go over and, rent first for like a year. Again, meet people. Part of it too is, regardless of how much research you do online, there's nothing like being boots on the ground, and when you go over there, you might realize, this area, region, or whatever, I thought it was going to have this vibe, but it has this other vibe, or it might be perfect. But going over there and kind of doing like a test drive of the expat retirement for a year. Like I said, rents can be very affordable. Can also give you a chance to look around for properties if you want to. There's a lot of properties online, but there's probably another 40% of them that don't get publicized online. You have to go to a local real estate agent. So yeah, mortgages, not impossible, but it's not like the United States where you can just be like, hey, here's my income and my credit score. What you got? They're going to be a little more risk averse for someone who, again, who you don't already have assets there that they can potentially, value and attach to your mortgage. So, but again, it's doable. It's just a process that you have to go through.
Yeah.
What was the next one? Oh, healthcare.
Healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare, which obviously is a massive cost in the United States. Um, obviously, if you're 65, Medicare covers a lot. Still cost involved with Medigap policies and things like that. But Italy and France both have universal health care, and that's not just for citizens, but for all residents, whether you're a citizen of the country or not. So I know with both of them, kind of like with the rent thing, when you move over there, you have to apply for a visa to get long-term stay. And when you arrive, you do have to show proof of a private health insurance program for at least the first year. And they basically want you to come over there and say, hey, I want to come live here, but number one, I can kind of prove I have some passive income. Again, that can be Social Security, some investments. It could be, if you have rental properties in the United States, you can show there's a number of ways to do that. But the health insurance is a big one too. They're like, hey, you can't just come over here and the next week get free health care for everything. I mean, it just doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah.
But once you're there and you become, a resident, again, they're it's written into their basically constitutions that everybody gets health care. Doesn't matter how much you make, how much you have. So there's a process you go through to apply for that. Can take, several months. And so they require you have some health care at least that first year. After that, again, super affordable. Even if you were going to pay, most of it's free. I mean, literally free. But even if you were going to go in and pay out of pocket for stuff, we're talking $20, $40, $50 for a full doctor's visit, consultation, tests, everything like that. It's unbelievably affordable. But again, that's why a lot of people love these countries. Is they, as a society, they made this decision that, hey, yes, our tax rates, income tax rates are higher, but you're going to get a bunch of benefits from it. Healthcare being a huge one. So yeah, and that's a massive savings again on what you would pay in the United States.
Oh yeah,
obviously medical bankruptcy in the United States is insane.
Yeah, and that's we're just talking about cost of just premiums a month, let alone the actual healthcare costs. So that's
absolutely
that's crazy. You had brought up taxes. So now obviously, if you're going to have universal healthcare, you're going to have these benefits. It comes with a higher tax rate. Can you talk us through kind of what they're around there and what people can expect moving over and staying for more than 12 months?
Sure. And this is, again, a pushback I get a lot for like my YouTube videos where people are like, oh, why would I want to go to Italy and pay, 25% income tax rate? And it's like, well, yeah, but now you got to back out, like you mentioned, you got to back out your monthly insurance premium of $1,200 or whatever it is. Public universities are free for residents. A lot of education is free. All the public transport is subsidized. There's a cost, but anyway, there's a lot of benefits. Yeah. I could get on that soapbox, but so you have to think about it two ways. I'll talk about general income taxes and then bring me back because Italy has a special incentive to get people to move to Italy, tax incentive. So bring me back to that. But in France and Italy, income tax rates, higher than the United States. I think everybody understands that. But if you're only looking at the rate, that's only part of the equation. If you consider the cost of living, that is the other part of the equation. So say in Italy, you don't go to one of the places where you can get the special tax rate. The taxes range from 23% to 43% on income. And it's progressive like the United States. So your first X amount, 23, then it's 25, then I think it's 31. And then anyway, it goes up from there. The rate, again, considerably higher. But if you can live on $24,000, $30,000, number one, you don't have to have as much saved. It's not like you move over there and your U.S. Social Security gets adjusted down because the cost of living over there is lower. it's the same. Your dollar is going to go a lot further. So you can live on a lot less, which means your income is going to be, your gross income is going to be a lot less. You can pull a lot less money. So yeah, France is similar. The progressive rates, again, start around 20%, go up to about 40%. But again, same thing. Tons of services, universal health care, public transport, just a lot of stuff included. But again, lower cost of living. So I was actually doing some numbers before we came on. I saw somewhere online that to live in the United States comfortably, and again, I don't know I think it's from Smart Asset. I don't know the basis for the exact survey question, but basically the answer was around $68,000 net. So after taxes in the United States. To live similarly in Italy, you would need about $30,000. So that's less than half.
Yeah.
So now if you then add in the what you would need gross for taxes, I was calculating it. So that would mean you would need about 87,000 in the US, and I just use like a 20%, real average tax return, tax rate. 42,000 in Italy. So again, now we're talking, yes, your tax rate is higher in Italy. That 42,000, you're going to lose more of that in a percentage to taxes, but you only have to have $42,000. You don't have to have $87,000. And that's where I think, a lot of people let the tail wag the dog when it comes to taxes. Is they're like, I can't imagine the feeling of giving the government, 35% of my income. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's on half the income that you would have to pay in the United States. And so the actual tax you pay might be about the same, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and
so,
it stretches your money out. Like, that's what you said.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to stretch out your dollar, be able to last a lot longer and as we know, in a healthier society. Let's just be real. We're not even going to get into the health rates and all of that stuff, but that's a huge piece of it too. And we're not going to dive too much more on taxes, but everyone's going to be like, well, aren't I getting taxed in the United States too on top of it?
Yes, exactly. And, obviously if you're doing IRA distributions, ordinary income tax rates, Social Security can be taxed depending on how much money, extra money you have. But again, if we're talking about living on, you got to live on $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 in the United States, you're going to have some more. There's going to be some money having to come in from somewhere else other than Social Security. Let me come back because I mentioned it, and I don't want to tease people. So Italy has a flat 7% income tax program. Basically, there are 8 regions, mostly in the south of France. So like if you look at a map of Italy and you see Rome, which is kind of like midway down, from there pretty much to the south, all of those regions, if you relocate to Italy, you have to move to a town or village that has 20,000 people or less, which are some of the most beautiful, these like hilltop, classic Italian, towns that you think of. You can qualify for 10 years to pay a flat 7% tax on your income. That's
10
it.
10 years?
10 years. So the year you arrive, however many months is left in that year, and then 9 additional years. And then at that point, it reverts just to your, regular income tax rates. But the south of Italy, south of France too, but Italy especially, over the past decades has had this massive migration of younger people moving out of these rural, villages and towns, moving to the north of the country where the majority of the industry is, Milan and Turin. People think of like Venice, like that's all up in the north near the Alps. So they've had this massive immigration or migration issue, I should say. And so to incentivize people like Americans, there's a ton of UK expats there. It doesn't matter what country you come from. But if you have a passive income from another country, so like Social Security from the US, or it could be just your investment returns, you can move to these regions. And again, 20,000 sounds like small town. My town in North Carolina, I think there's like 9,000.
Yeah.
And we have everything. We have grocery stores, we have shops, we have bars and restaurants. So it's not like you're moving into, nowhere.
Right.
Anyway, but you can do this, and again, qualify for this tax regime, which for 10 years, 7% income tax, as opposed to the, again, 30 or 40% that I mentioned earlier. So it's a huge deal. Again, if you want your dollars to go further, low cost of living, flat tax rate, Mediterranean climate, food, wine, love dolce vita, the sweet life,
right,
in Italy. France, again, the same thing. France just doesn't have the incentive, but it's France. I mean,
let's be real.
Castles, rivers, vineyards. I don't have to pitch it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's that 7% tax rate thing is massive in Italy.
So if you're everyone listening and you're thinking about it, your toes are dipping in the water, one, reach out to Tommy, but two, plan for it. It ultimately is, and running the numbers off the top of my head, going to be a benefit for you if this is where your heart desires, right? Like you had said, this is more of an emotional thing. I want to live there. I want to live this life. If you are going to, there's pathway to doing so. As Tommy mentioned, the first 12 months, go rent. Figure out where you want to be. It also buys you time for the healthcare and for the mortgage situation. Figure out what you want to do. And then don't worry about healthcare because you're good to go in that regard. And taxes, again, it is a conversation that is to be had, but it is not like the United States. You would have less income needed. Therefore, you're probably paying roughly the same tax rate. So, Tommy, I appreciate it. What do you want to leave everyone left listening with? What do you want to leave them with right here before the holidays?
Just to follow up on what you just said, that it's not, honestly, it just takes a little research. I've done a ton myself just because I'm fascinated with this. There's a lot of information out there. Not all of it's true. So make sure you do, again, double check if you hear rumors about, various things, numbers and cost of living and things like that. You want to double check that. Put together a financial plan does not have to be super complicated. It's better to be approximately, correct than trying to get every little minutia detail perfect. Because again, we want to generally say, hey, is this a go or a no go? Like, is this something feasible? And if it is, like, doing a plan, you can be like, oh my gosh, I can retire 5 years earlier than I thought, or I can, I don't have to worry about trying to get an extra job to make ends meet. I can actually be retired and live that life that I had been thinking about. Again, a plan is going to not only show you the numbers, but it's going to give you the confidence to again move forward. And that's what I want. I want people to feel empowered to take action, and it's important to do that with a plan.
You heard it here first. Take action, everybody.
The preceding program was sponsored by Black Mammoth. Any awards, rankings, or recognition by unaffiliated third parties or publications are in no way indicative of the advisor's future performance or any individual client's investment success. No award, ranking, or recognition should be construed as a current or past endorsement of Black Mammoth. Information regarding specific awards, rankings, or recognitions is available on the Black Mammoth website, www.blackmammoth.com. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. Investment strategies such as asset allocation, diversification, or rebalancing do not assure or guarantee better performance and cannot eliminate the risk of investment losses. There are no guarantees that a portfolio employing these or any other strategy will outperform a portfolio that does not engage in such strategies. This broadcast should not be construed by any client or prospective client as a solicitation to affect or attempt to affect transactions and securities, or the rendering of personalized investment advice due to various factors, including changing market conditions. The information discussed in this broadcast may no longer be reflective of current positions or recommendations. While information presented is believed to be factual and up-to-date, Black Mammoth do not guarantee its accuracy, and it should not be regarded as a complete analysis of the subjects discussed. The tax and estate planning information discussed is general in nature and is provided for informational purposes only, and should not be construed as legal or tax advice. Listeners should consult an attorney or tax professional regarding their specific legal or tax situation. Past performance is not indicative of future results.